He had just one chance, a job interview that could change his life forever. But on the way, Marcus, a struggling single dad, saw a stranger stranded in the rain. In that split second, he faced an impossible choice: chase his dream or help someone he didn't even know. What he didn't realize was that this act of kindness would lead to a miracle he never expected. Time was running out. Marcus's pulse quickened as he glanced at the glowing numbers on the dashboard clock. His shirt was freshly ironed, his tie neatly knotted, and his resume carefully tucked inside the worn leather briefcase sitting on the passenger seat. Everything about his appearance was polished, but beneath it all, his heart carried the heavy weight of responsibility. Today wasn't just any day. It was the day he had been waiting for, an interview for a steady, well-paying job that could change his life. For years, Marcus had worked odd shifts, small gigs, and anything that paid just enough to keep the lights on. But it was never enough. Not with rent due every month, not with groceries growing more expensive, and certainly not with his little daughter Lila depending on him. As a single father raising a 6-year-old, Marcus had become accustomed to sacrifice. He had missed nights out with friends, opportunities to rest, even meals at times, just to make sure his daughter never went without. But this job interview could finally be the answer. If he got it, there would be no more choosing between paying the bills and buying school supplies. He could finally give Lila the childhood she deserved. The rain came down harder, pounding against the windshield in sheets that blurred his vision. The wipers screeched back and forth, barely keeping up. He leaned forward, squinting at the slick streets lit by glowing street lamps. The city looked gray and unforgiving, but inside the car, Marcus's determination burned bright. He whispered under his breath, more a prayer than a statement. "Please let me make it on time. Please." Every red light felt like a cruel trick. Every slow-moving car in front of him, a reminder of the minutes slipping away. He could picture Lila's face that morning before he dropped her off at his neighbor's apartment. Her tiny hands had clutched his as she looked up at him with innocent hope. "Daddy," she had said, "will you get the job today?" He had crouched down, brushing her curls back gently. "I'm going to do my very best, baby girl, and no matter what happens, I'll never stop trying." Remembering her words fueled him. He pressed the gas a little harder. He was going to make it. He had to. But fate had a different plan. As Marcus turned a corner, something unexpected caught his eye. A red convertible sat stalled in the middle of the street, its hazard lights blinking faintly through the storm. Next to it stood a woman in a flowing orange gown, soaked by the rain, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. She was barefoot, holding one high heel in her hand while the other dangled broken at her side. The scene looked almost surreal, like a photograph dropped into the middle of reality. Raindrops clung to her hair, her makeup streaked down her cheeks, and she struggled to balance on the wet pavement as cars honked angrily, swerving to avoid her. Each passing driver glanced briefly, but sped on, unwilling to be delayed. Marcus felt his grip tighten on the steering wheel. His mind spun. "Keep driving. You'll miss the interview if you stop." But another thought pushed through. If that were Lila out there, helpless and stranded, wouldn't you want someone to help her? His chest tightened. He knew the answer. In that moment, Marcus realized the decision wasn't about convenience, it was about character. And no matter how much he needed that job, he couldn't ignore someone in need. He slowed his car, pulling to the side of the road. The rain immediately soaked through his shirt as he stepped out, but he didn't hesitate. He grabbed his umbrella and jogged toward the woman. "Are you all right, miss?" he asked, raising the umbrella over her. The woman exhaled in frustration, clearly embarrassed. "My heel snapped, and now my car won't start. I don't even know where to begin. This night just keeps getting worse." She shifted uncomfortably, wincing as her bare foot touched the rough pavement. Marcus noticed a small cut forming along her ankle, the rain washing a faint line of red down her skin. Without hesitation, He knelt down in front of her, ignoring the cold water pooling on the asphalt. "Here," he said calmly. "Lean on me." She hesitated, looking down at him. "You don't have to—" "I know," he interrupted gently, "but I can't just leave you like this." His voice carried no pity, no judgment, just kindness. And it startled her. People rarely stopped anymore, let alone gave up their time, yet here he was, this stranger in a white shirt, kneeling in the rain to help her. Marcus guided her carefully back toward the car and opened the passenger door. He slipped off his jacket, folding it into a cushion for her to rest her foot on. With practiced care, he pulled a handkerchief from his pocket, tying it gently around the cut to stop the bleeding. The woman watched him, stunned. "Most people would have just kept driving," she admitted softly. Marcus gave a small, tired smile. "Maybe. But my mama raised me better." She studied him closely now, noticing the soaked shirt, the briefcase still sitting on his car seat, the look of quiet determination in his eyes. Something about him felt different. "Thank you," she whispered. Marcus simply nodded, though inside, a weight pressed against his chest. The minutes he had left for his interview had slipped away. The opportunity he had been chasing for weeks was gone. He knew it. Yet, as he knelt there, shielding a stranger from the rain, he didn't feel regret. Only a strange peace, as if deep down he had made the only choice he could. Marcus grabbed the umbrella from his back seat and sprinted toward the stranded woman. The rain beat down mercilessly, soaking him within seconds, but he barely noticed. His only thought was getting to her before she slipped again on the slick pavement. "Are you okay, miss?" he called out, raising the umbrella over her head. His voice was steady, though inside he was already calculating the time he had lost. The woman looked at him, her mascara smudged, hair clinging to her face. She gave a sharp exhale, half in frustration, half in embarrassment. "My heel snapped and my car won't start. Perfect night for everything to go wrong." She tried to take a step, but the wet asphalt was unforgiving. She winced, hissing, softly as her bare foot scraped the ground. The glamorous image she had started the night with was now reduced to a picture of vulnerability. An expensive gown clinging to her in the rain, one heel dangling uselessly in her hand, and her dignity slipping away with every passing car that honked at the sight of her blocking the lane. Marcus didn't hesitate. He knelt down in the water pooling around their feet. "Here, lean on me." His voice was calm but firm, the tone of someone used to helping others even when it wasn't convenient. She hesitated, glancing down at him in disbelief. No stranger had ever knelt in the mud for her before. "You don't have to do this," she muttered, her pride pricking through her discomfort. Marcus looked up at her with a small, warm smile. "I know, but I can't just leave you here." Something about the way he said it carried weight, like it wasn't just about her, like it was about the values etched into him long before this rainy night. He shifted closer and carefully examined her foot. There was a shallow cut near her ankle, nothing life-threatening but enough to sting with every step. He shook his head, softly. "It's not bad, but you shouldn't walk on it." Before she could protest, he rose and guided her gently toward the car. He opened the passenger door of the red convertible, shielding her with the umbrella as she settled inside. The rain tapped rhythmically against the glossy surface of the car, droplets racing down like tiny rivers. Marcus crouched again, this time removing his own jacket. The fabric was already damp, but he folded it carefully and used it to pat her, foot dry. Then, with practiced hands, he pulled out a clean handkerchief from his pocket, an old habit his mother had instilled in him. "Always carry one. You never know when someone else might need it." He tied it snugly around her foot, creating a makeshift bandage. It wasn't fancy, but it was enough to stop the bleeding and ease the sting of the rain. His shirt clung to his chest, water dripping from his hair. But he didn't seem to care. His focus remained entirely on her. For the first time, the woman really looked at him, not just as a man helping her, but as a person. His kindness wasn't rehearsed. His movements weren't calculated to impress. Everything about him radiated sincerity. She swallowed, suddenly unsure of what to say. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice softer now. "Most people would have just driven by." Marcus let out a small chuckle, shaking his head as if the idea itself felt absurd. "Maybe, but my mama raised me better." The words lingered, in the air, heavy with meaning. He said them without pride, without expectation. Just simple truth. The woman blinked, feeling something stir within her chest, a strange mixture of gratitude and curiosity. Who was this man who had stopped in the middle of the rain, risking his own plans, his own time, just to help a stranger? For Marcus, the moment wasn't about heroism. It was about doing the right thing, no matter the cost. He didn't know her name. He didn't know her story. But he knew enough. She was someone in need, and he couldn't turn his back. As he stood, rain still pouring around them, his briefcase sat forgotten in his car. The clock ticked relentlessly toward the interview he had already missed. But Marcus didn't look at his watch. He didn't rush her. He simply offered the stranger a smile, one that carried warmth even in the cold storm. And for the first time that night, the woman in the orange gown felt safe. Not because of her car, not because of her wealth, not because of appearances, but because a soaked, exhausted single dad decided to care when no one else did. By the time Marcus finished, nearly 30 minutes had slipped away unnoticed. The rain had slowed to a mist, but inside his chest, a storm brewed. He looked down at the woman's foot, neatly wrapped in his handkerchief, and forced a reassuring smile. Outwardly, he seemed calm, but deep inside, reality cut deep. His interview was gone. The opportunity he had been praying for, the one he had built up in his mind as his family's turning point, had evaporated right before his eyes. Still, Marcus didn't let his disappointment show. He adjusted the umbrella above her, shielding her from the drizzle, and acted as though everything was fine. But the woman noticed. She wasn't just seeing his actions now. She was watching his expression, the way his eyes lingered on the distance, the quiet sigh he tried to swallow. Something in his face told a story, one of struggle, sacrifice, and a lifetime of carrying more than his share of burdens. "You're in a rush, aren't you?" she asked gently, her voice carrying both curiosity and guilt. Marcus hesitated. For a moment he considered lying, brushing it off, saying he was fine. But lying wasn't in his nature. He had never been the type to sugarcoat his reality, especially not when truth weighed so heavily. Finally, he exhaled. "I had a job interview across town," he admitted, his voice steady but subdued. "A big one. I've been preparing for weeks." But he glanced at the dashboard clock in his car and then back at her, a small, resigned smile forming. "Looks like I'm going to miss it." Her eyes widened. She blinked, almost unable to process what he was saying. "Wait, you gave up your interview to help me?" The question hung in the air, almost disbelieving. She was used to people chasing their own interests, their own gains. In her world, time was money, and people rarely sacrificed either for strangers. Marcus gave a half shrug, as though his decision didn't matter as much as she thought. "It's fine," he said softly. "You needed help more than I needed that job. I'll figure something out." The words were simple, but the sincerity behind them struck her like lightning. His tone wasn't bitter or self-pitying. He wasn't trying to guilt her or earn praise. He meant every word, and that shook her more than anything else. She looked at him more closely now, really studying him. the soaked shirt clinging to his shoulders, the briefcase in the car he hadn't touched once, the way he carried himself, not with arrogance, but with quiet strength. Most of the people she knew, especially in her circle of wealth and power, would never risk something valuable for someone they didn't know. Yet here he was, willing to lose his chance at a better future, just to help a stranger standing barefoot in the rain. "Who are you?" she murmured softly, almost to herself. Then louder, "What's your name?" Marcus extended his hand politely, rain dripping from his fingers. "Marcus Johnson." She repeated it quietly, as though memorizing it. "Marcus." Her lips curved into the faintest smile, though her eyes remained thoughtful. "I owe you more than just a thank you." Marcus shook his head. "You don't owe me anything. Really, just get home safe." But she didn't let it go. She leaned back against the car seat, her mind spinning. She was a woman who commanded respect wherever she went, a woman people catered to because of her wealth and power. And yet none of those people, not her drivers, not her assistants, not even her business partners, would have done what this soaked, exhausted man had just done. In him, she saw something rare: integrity, compassion, a willingness to put someone else first even when it cost him dearly. She realized something then. This wasn't just about a kind act. This was about character. And character, she knew, was more valuable than money, titles, or status. As Marcus turned, preparing to return to his car, the woman's voice cut through the patter of the rain. "Marcus Johnson," she said again, her tone stronger this time. "I won't forget this." Marcus glanced back at her, his expression unreadable but gentle. "Don't worry about me," he said. "I'll find another opportunity. Life has a way of working out." But as he walked away, she sat in silence, her heart unsettled. She had no idea why a stranger's selflessness had touched her so deeply. All she knew was this: Marcus Johnson was no ordinary man, and she wasn't about to let his sacrifice go unrepaid. Later that week, Marcus trudged up the narrow staircase leading to his small apartment. The weight of the week sat heavy on his shoulders, missed opportunities unanswered, calls, polite rejection emails. He carried a paper bag of groceries that barely held enough to get them through the weekend. When he unlocked the door, the familiar sight of his modest home greeted him. The paint on the walls was chipped, the carpet worn thin, and the heater rattled whenever it kicked on. But inside there was warmth, not from the space itself, but from the little girl sitting at the kitchen table. Lila looked up, her curls bouncing as she waved a crayon in greeting. "Daddy, look, I drew us." Marcus set the groceries down and smiled, though his chest ached. He bent down to look at her picture, a stick figure with big brown eyes holding hands with a smaller one. Above them was a bright yellow sun and a house far larger than the one they lived in. "It's beautiful, baby," Marcus said softly, ruffling her hair. "You're a real artist." But when he turned to put the groceries away, his smile faltered. Bills covered the counter in a messy stack: rent, electricity, medical. Each envelope seemed to glare at him, reminding him of his failures. He rubbed the back of his neck, trying to push away the knot of frustration. For Lila's sake, he had to stay cheerful. "Daddy," Lila said suddenly, her voice sweet but curious. "Did you get the job?" Marcus froze for a second. His throat tightened. "Not yet, sweetheart," he replied gently. "But don't you worry. Daddy's still trying." Before she could ask more, a sharp knock echoed through the apartment. Marcus frowned. They rarely had visitors. He wiped his hands on his shirt and went to the door. When he opened it, his breath caught. Standing there was the woman from the rain. Only this time, she wasn't a stranded stranger. She was polished, poised, and breathtakingly confident. Her orange gown had been replaced with a tailored navy suit, her hair neatly styled and her heels perfectly intact. She carried herself with the authority of someone who was used to being in charge. Marcus blinked, caught off guard. "You," the woman extended her hand with a warm smile. "I'm Victoria Hayes, CEO of Hayes Enterprises." The name hit him like a tidal wave. Marcus knew Hayes Enterprises. Everyone did. It was one of the largest corporations in the city, employing thousands. A CEO? He never would have guessed that the barefoot woman stranded in the rain was one of the most powerful business leaders around. For a moment, Marcus could only stand there, words stuck in his throat. Victoria noticed his surprise and chuckled lightly. "I know. Not quite the image I gave you the other night, is it?" Marcus shook his head slowly, still processing. "Not at all." She stepped inside, her presence filling the small living room. She glanced around briefly. The worn furniture, the coloring books on the table, the stack of unpaid bills. But instead of judgment, her eyes softened. "I did some thinking after you helped me," Victoria began. "You missed your interview because of me, and I don't take that lightly." She paused, her gaze steady. "But more than that, I saw something rare in you. Integrity, patience, and kindness. You didn't know who I was. You didn't expect anything in return, and still, you chose to help." Marcus swallowed hard, unsure what to say. Compliments weren't something he was used to, especially not from someone like her. Then she delivered, the words that made his world stop. "That's the kind of person I want on my team." He stared at her, disbelief etched across his face. "Wait, are you offering me a job?" Victoria's smile widened. "Yes, and not just any job. A position in my company where you can grow, provide for your daughter, and finally, get the stability you deserve." Marcus felt his knees weaken. For so long he had dreamed of a chance like this, and now it was standing right in front of him, handed to him not because of luck, but because he had chosen to do the right thing. Before he could answer, a small voice interrupted. "Daddy?" Lila peeked out from behind his leg, her big eyes wide with curiosity. She clutched her crayon in one hand, staring at the elegant woman in their home. Victoria's expression softened instantly. She crouched down so she was at Lila's level, her polished heels clicking against the floor. With a gentle smile, she said, "Hi there. I think your dad is pretty amazing." Lila's eyes lit up and she grinned proudly. "Yeah, he is." Tears stung Marcus's eyes as he looked between his daughter and the woman who had just changed his life. For the first time in a long time, hope didn't feel like a dream. It felt real, standing in his living room, offering him a future he thought he'd lost. From that day forward, Marcus's life transformed in ways he could hardly have imagined. His first day at Hayes Enterprises was overwhelming at first. Walking into the sleek glass building downtown, surrounded by employees in sharp suits and polished shoes, Marcus felt out of place. He wasn't used to corporate life. His past jobs had been in warehouses, restaurants, and delivery vans. Yet Victoria had assured him, "I'm not hiring you for what you know. I'm hiring you for who you are. Skills can be taught. Character cannot." Those words stayed with him as he adjusted to his new role. And she was right. Marcus threw himself into every task, whether it was small administrative work or team projects. His natural ability to lead, his calm under pressure, and the empathy he showed his co-workers quickly set him apart. Soon, people were looking to him not just as a colleague, but as someone they could trust. For the first time in his life, Marcus didn't feel like he was just surviving. He was building something. A career, a foundation, a future. Every evening, he would return home to Lila, his tired body fueled by the joy of telling her about his day. The apartment began to change too. The stack of unpaid bills grew smaller. The cupboards stayed full. Lila got new shoes, new books, and even art supplies to fuel her creativity. She no longer had to see the worry lines etched across her father's forehead, and that, to Marcus, was the greatest blessing of all. "Daddy, you're smiling more now," Lila said one evening as she worked on a drawing. Marcus chuckled, pulling her close. "That's because I finally feel like everything's going to be okay." But the changes weren't just in his home. At work, Victoria often checked in on him, not as a distant CEO, but as someone who genuinely cared. Their bond deepened with every passing week. They discovered they shared similar values: hard work, humility, and the belief that people mattered more than titles. Victoria had grown up in privilege, but had fought her own battles to be taken seriously as a leader. Marcus, on the other hand, had clawed his way through hardship, learning resilience in the face of struggle. Together, they found common ground in their differences. She admired the way Marcus put his daughter first in everything he did. He admired the way Victoria used her influence to lift others up instead of pushing them down. What began as an accident on a rainy street slowly turned into something far greater: a life-changing connection, one built not on convenience, but on respect, trust, and shared humanity. Months later, as Marcus walked through the Hayes Enterprises lobby, now confident in his role, he paused for a moment to reflect. He thought about the rainy night that had started it all, the broken heel, the stalled car, and the impossible choice he had faced. At the time, losing his interview had felt like a crushing defeat. But now he understood. Sometimes, the opportunities we think we lose aren't losses at all. They're simply detours guiding us toward something bigger, something meant for us. One evening, as Marcus tucked Lila into bed, she asked in her innocent voice, "Daddy, if you had gone to that other job interview, would we still be okay now?" Marcus smiled, brushing her curls back gently. "Baby girl, maybe things would have been different. But here's what I know. Helping others will never set you back. It just might be the very thing that takes you forward." Lila grinned sleepily, her small hand squeezing his. "Like how helping Miss Victoria helped us?" He chuckled softly, kissing her forehead. "Exactly. Sometimes the best things in life happen when you're not even looking for them." As he turned off the light, Marcus whispered a quiet prayer of gratitude for the chance he thought he had lost, for the stranger who had walked into his life, and for the little girl who gave him the courage to keep going. For Marcus Johnson, life had come full circle. The rain that once threatened to drown his dreams had, in the end, watered the seeds of a future brighter than he ever imagined. Sometimes the biggest blessings come disguised as setbacks. Marcus thought he had lost everything that day, but fate had a greater plan. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Voice of Hope, where every story reminds us that kindness can change lives.